compassion is. One definition I found states that compassion, from the Greek word, means to bear with or to suffer with. The second definition states that compassion is a person's awareness of the misfortune and suffering of others and the desire to alleviate it. So if we are to be truly compassionate and help alleviate the suffering of others, we must, by the definition of compassion, also suffer with them. Shakyamuni Buddha proclaimed to us in the first of the Four Noble Truths that life means suffering. So if one is to be truly live, one must suffer. I think this could also be expanded to say that life means suffering with others. So why then is life suffering? To live means to suffer because our human nature is not perfect. Our nature is not perfect because it is based on attachments. One of these attachments is of wanted permanence, which is at odds with what we know to be because we know that all things in life are impermanent. The other is our attachment to the idea of the independent I, which is a delusion. So why is the independent I a delusion? When one thinks of their existence through the thought that usually enters one's mind is, yes, I'm breathing, I have a conscious mind, I am alive. While all these realities might be true, when we take a broader or more in-depth look at the causes and conditions that made up our existence, or the I, our perspective is widened. A broad and vast array of causes and conditions that one can see if they look closely, that do make up our whole being, show us that our existence or reality is also dependent on the makeup and effort of others. When we see someone without knowing them, sometimes we will label or identify the person by factors such as clothing, height, etc. But when we meet the person, we can attach a name. We now have a label or something to identify the I in the other person. If we look at the person as an independent collection of physical parts, we see that no matter where we look in the physical sense, we cannot find the I. The I is only a collection of the person's physical being or independent parts, but it's something that comes to being because and through the causes and conditions of our being are part of and a result of the collective whole. So in this way, the idea of the independent I is at odds with reality. So it could be said that suffering is caused by the delusion of the independent I, or ego, as well as our desire for permanence in a world of impermanence. So if life is suffering with others, then what is the point of compassion? Because compassion makes us truly human and gives us the opportunity to see things in a more enlightened way. Through compassion and feeling the pain of others, we become aware of our own true nature. This true nature, or true self, is also the path through which one performs selfless giving, in putting forth effort to alleviate suffering. When we do this, we are really helping to alleviate our own suffering. Our own suffering because our attachments, or ego. Because in order for us to act compassionately, we must look past the delusion of ego, or independent I, and act in a selfless giving way. So compassion can be a tool to the path of realization of delusional self, or ego, and how to work past it when we act in this selfless way. So what is selfless giving? We all give in various aspects, but what exactly is selfless giving? I believe it is giving from one's true heart, giving not to satisfy one group or another. The key and goal to accomplishing this, in my opinion, is to truly know one's true self. This is to look deep down in oneself, beyond our prejudices and false views of things, and I believe more importantly, our ego. When one does this, I think a bigger and more broad view of things as they really are opens our eyes to realize that we are all connected and that our efforts have a reciprocal effect on everything. Just as our being and our existence is the result of the accumulated efforts of not only ourselves but the others as well. Realizing this, our efforts and source of motivational desire start to flow naturally from our heart instead of our head. This is a quote from the Hongwanji mission of Australia, which I happen to come across. The final objective of Buddhists is to become a Buddha, because Buddhas have perfect aspiration of the human heart. So for one to become a Buddha, one must free themselves of attachments. Although we may not be able to attain Buddhahood in this lifetime, when one acts compassionately, we must act selflessly or beyond ego, and therefore exposing or acting on one's true self. I think there is a liberating joy that can come about as a result of this effort. The joy is received through letting go of ego in the required plateau of selflessness. So where the original intent might be to help others, we can see how when we ourselves actually gain benefit from living with compassion. In this way, in my mind, we act compassionately. We are showing our acting on our true Buddha nature, which we all have. I do not think that compassion is something that can be learned or acquired by some means. It is something in my mind that can be nurtured, but not instilled in someone. I believe just as we all have Buddha nature, this nature is the source from which compassion arises when we look beyond the delusion of the I. However dry and barren our minds become through the delusion life provides us, I still believe ultimately we all have Buddha nature that can be nurtured and grow. I think this means that the opportunity to view things in the course of life with compassionate and awakened mind is ever present. If we were to equate or view similarly compassion in that it is something beyond the delusion of self and the truth of Dharma as being one and the same, I think this insight, based loosely on a quote from Nietzsche Han, may hold true. In fertile and infertile land of the mind, the seed of the Buddha nature is firmly planted. The drop of rain of Dharma is absorbed by the driest of land. The seed always waits. Make fertile the mind that the drug caused by ego can be overgrown. I'd just like to share a short story that I came across. It was written by Mary Sherman Hilbert in 1980. It's written in the first person. Since she was 6 years old, when I first met her on the beach near where I live, I drive to this beach a short distance of 3 or 4 miles, whenever the world begins to close in on me. She was building a sandcastle or something, and I looked up, her eyes as blue as the sea. "Hello," I said. I answered with a nod, not really in the mood to bother with a small child. "I'm building," she said. "I see that. What is that?" I asked, not really caring. "Oh, I don't know. I just feel like playing in the sand." That sounds good, I thought, and slipped off my shoes. A sandpiper glided by. "That's joy," the child said. "It's a what?" "It's a joy. My mama says sandpipers come to bring us joy." A bird went gliding down the beach. "Goodbye, joy," I muttered to myself. "Hello, pain." Turned to walk on. I was depressed, and my life seemed completely out of balance. "What's your name?" She wouldn't give up. "Robert," I answered. "I'm Robert Peterson." "Mine's Wendy. I'm 6. "Hi, Wendy." She giggled. "You're funny," I said. In spite of my gloom, I laughed too and walked on. Her musical giggle followed me. "Come again, Mr. P," she called. "We'll have another happy day." The next few days consisted of a group of unruly Boy Scouts, PTA meetings, and my ailing mother. The sun was shining one morning as I took my hands out of the dishwasher. "I need a sandpiper," I said to myself, gathering up my coat. The ever-changing balm of the seashore awaited me. The breeze was chilly, but I strode along, trying to recapture the serenity that I needed. "Hello, Mr. P," she said. "Do you want to play?" "What do you have in mind?" I asked, with walk. Looking at her, I noticed her delicate fairness of her face. "Where do you live?" I asked. "Over there," she pointed towards a row of summer cottages. Strange, I thought, in winter. "Where do you go to school?" "I don't go to school. My mommy says we're on vacation." She chattered as the little girl, as we strolled up the beach. My mind was on other things. When I left for home, Wendy said it had been a happy day. Feeling surprisingly better, I smiled at her and agreed. 3 weeks later, I rushed to the beach in a state of near panic. I was in no mood to even greet Wendy. I thought I saw her mother on the porch, and I felt like demanding she keep her child at home. "Look, if you don't mind," I said crossly when Wendy caught up with me, "I'd rather be left alone today." She seemed unusually pale and out of breath. "Why?" she asked. I turned to her and shouted, "Because my mother died." And I thought, oh my God, what was I saying to this little child? "Oh," she said quietly, "then this is a bad day." "Yes," I said, "and yesterday and the day before, and just go away." "Did it hurt?" she inquired. "Did what hurt?" I was exasperated with her and with myself. "When she died, of course it hurt," I snapped, misunderstanding. Wrapped up in myself, I strolled off. A month or so after that, I went to the beach. She wasn't there. Feeling guilty and ashamed, and admitting to myself I missed her, I went up to the cottage after my walk and knocked on the door. A drawn-looking young woman with honey-colored hair opened the door. "Hello," I said. "I'm Robert Peterson. I missed your little girl today and was wondering where she is." "Oh, yes, Mr. Peterson. Please come in," Wendy spoke of you so much. "I'm afraid I allowed her to bother you. If she was a nuisance, please accept my apologies." "No, not at all. She's a delightful child," I said, suddenly realizing that I meant what I just said. "Wendy died last week, Mr. Peterson. She had leukemia. Maybe she didn't tell you." Struck dumb, I grabbed her a chair. I had to catch my breath. She loved this beach, so when she asked to come, we couldn't say no. She seemed so much better here, and a lot of what she called happy days. But in the last few weeks, she declined rapidly. Her voice faltered. "She left something for you. If only I could find it. Could you wait a moment while I look?" I nodded stupidly, my mind racing for something to say to this lovely young woman. She handed me a smeared envelope with Mr. P printed in bold, childish letters. Inside it was a drawing in a bright crayon of a yellow beach and a blue sea and a brown bird. Underneath was carefully printed, "A sandpiper to bring you joy." Tears welled up in my eyes, and my heart that I had almost forgotten to love opened wide. I took Wendy's mother in my arms. "I'm so sorry, so sorry, so sorry." I had heard over and over again when we wept together. The precious little girl. It's framed now in my hands and hangs in my study. 6 words for each year of her life that speak to me of harmony, courage, and undemanding love. My gift from a child was sea blue eyes, my hair color of sand, who taught me the gift of love. I think this story is an example of how it's important for us not to let our ego-centered mind make our pain paramount at the sacrifice of negating others' suffering. Sometimes the person we are negating may be suffering more than us. Did the girl in this story not have true Buddha nature and compassion? Her attitude and actions were not filtered through ego or the independent I. She saw past her own suffering to be concerned with others. Her focus was on the good or bad days of others, and not of her own. Sometimes it takes someone who is suffering more than oneself to truly make us humble. When we can find joy in life beyond, when they can find joy in life beyond their own suffering. The sandpiper is a reminder or symbol of how joy and love is always available as a gift we can give to others when we try to live a life of heartfelt compassion. This is not the true working of the pure and unfaltering compassion that the Amida has to offer us. Amida is the Buddha of infinite light and eternal light. He is the manifestation of the absolute and supreme reality. Light is wisdom, and life is the compassion that results in perfect wisdom. Amida's Buddha's understanding is so complete that when he thinks of us, he knows us exactly as we are, and indeed accepts us as we are because of his perfect wisdom. This is why we say Namo Nembutsu, which means I take refuge in Amida Buddha. We take refuge because our compassion is limited by our own jiriki, which is our self-power, and that we are imperfect. Because of our limited self, we cannot extend enough compassion to save all or ourselves. This is why we must entrust our salvation and enlightenment to Tariki, which is the other power of Amida. Dharma, in his desire to liberate all sentient beings from suffering and delusion, made 48 vows. These vows are aimed at his becoming a fully awakened Buddha and establishing transient realm, the Pure Land, where ideal conditions are to be found for attaining enlightenment and nirvana, where all are assured of a place. The guarantee of a place for all in the Pure Land, as assured by Dharma Karma's vows being fulfilled and him becoming Amida Buddha, is pure, unwavering compassion, and is offered for us to receive. Maybe when receiving this gift in our strive to live a life of compassion, we should try to offer it to others as best we are able also. It is the compassion of Amida and my gratitude for it that truly arises in me, my source of my heartfelt Nembutsu of gratitude. I'd like to thank you for listening to me today. I'd also like to thank you for the opportunity to speak and gift of your time. Thank you very much.